Hey, this is Rev up in Washington, up near Seattle. It's been a long time since I posted on Homebrew Wednesday, but life seems to have gotten in the way. End of the school year, inline hockey league, which picked up right after ice hockey, and I coached two teams this year, so I really didn't have any time whatsoever. Hopefully I'm back in the game here. I'd like to, maybe once a week is too much, but I'd still like to be able to at least post a couple times a month some videos. So this week, August 5th, Wednesday, August 5th, I'm in my garage enjoying a little Uinta Summer Golden Ale. A little bit of citrusy hop character, grain in the background. They say it's an ale. Maybe a little reminiscent of Kolsch. It's very lager-like. I'm not sure. I haven't really taken the time to get a deep analysis on there. It's probably pretty low in alcohol, somewhere between 4 and 5%. I love it. I've been drinking a lot of this summer. It's flavorful, but light. You can drink a whole lot of them. I'm using my coasters that I got relatively new. They're pretty cool. These are actually made from our inline hockey rink surface. We did a resurfacing project in my inline hockey league this year. We used to play on asphalt with a ball, inline ball hockey, kind of like the way they used to play pro beach hockey back in the early 2000s. But we made an investment and resurfaced the whole rink. In this, it's called Ice Court. It actually comes in 1-foot squares, but we cut these down as a fundraiser. Cut them down, so we got 4 of these out of every square foot tile, whatever. They're kind of cool coasters, like it says fundraiser. Enjoying these. This week I'd like to talk a little bit about a project I have done over the last couple of days. It's kind of the end of summer. Been drinking a lot of different kinds of beer, but in the middle of the day when it's really hot, I've been really kind of going to light, refreshing, lagers and ales. And it's got a really nice creamy white head on it. And when I finished up my keg of classic American Pilsner, I thought to myself, man, it'd be nice if I could brew another batch of that right now, but it's just too hot. And I don't really have fermentation chambers or anything like that. I could use my beer fridge, or I could put my carboy, I can squeeze a carboy into my keezer, but that takes up keg space unless I put it on the compressor hump. And then it's really kind of a tight fit. And instead of taking up a room where I've got beer, I thought, how can I keep stuff cool? So I'm in the process of upgrading a whole bunch of stuff. I'm in the process of building a 4-chamber fermentation box where I can have up to at least 4 carboys going at a time, separate chambers, so that I can be doing ales and lagers. Each one be separately controlled with heating and cooling elements. That's kind of a winter project. Looking at controlling that with a computer on a board system, such like Raspberry Pi, or at the very least, the temperature controllers will be run with Arduino. It's pretty cheap, pretty stable controller from what I've read. But in the meantime, I want something, so I want to brew another batch of lager right now so that I have it in time here in the next few weeks, so that I still have something on tap when it's still pretty warm in September. So I got to thinking about some way of lowering the thermal mass around the beer. And I know that James over at Basic Brewing Radio, in his low cock, that's terrible. Wow, low-tech lager brewing systems. He's used a pump and his immersion chiller to pump water through ice in a cooler to keep his lagers cool. I don't want to mess with ice. I don't want to mess with frozen water bottles, I want to be relatively hands-off. So I started thinking about that, and from there I thought about a heat exchanger, like a copper coil that I could set up in the keezer, where I've already got the temperature set at about 48 to 50 degrees. I think it's set for 50 degrees as far as the air temperature in there, so my beer is actually at 50 degrees. Along the walls and stuff, it's a little bit cooler. But I could utilize the keezer without taking up keg space somehow to do some heat exchange. So I thought about a copper coil. I did a little bit of research on the internet. I didn't see anybody else who's using anything like this, but I figured, hey, that makes it all the better, a little bit of an experiment. So I had some soft copper tubing laying around, and I went out and bought a little bit of extra. Bought the cheapest pond pump I could, a pump that pumps about 155 gallons per hour. That ran me for under 20 bucks. So my total investment on parts between the new copper tubing and the pump is under $40. That seems like a reasonable weekend project. It's utilizing something I already have in place, the keezer, and I'm in the process of running some experiments right now to see exactly, what kind of ambient temperature I can hold with that. That'll be future episode of Homebrew Wednesday. So this week what I'll show you is the parts that I used. I'll show you kind of fabrication, talk your way through the fabrication process, the install, show you some pictures of it inside the keezer, and kind of in operation, not with any beer in there or anything, but just show it pumping water. You get a basic idea. And after I get some data points as far as how low I can get that temperature in that garbage can that I'm going to be using as my to hold the thermal mass for my brew vessel, for my fermentation vessel, I will post that in a future episode of Homebrew Wednesday. Alright, so here's the setup. You can see the heat exchanger, the manifold, runs inside the kegerator, or the keezer, sorry, and then out through the side past the taps. Comes out over here. I've got the tubes hooked up. I've got the inlet on the bottom, thinking that working against gravity will slow the flow, with the coldest water coming back, the return on top. Okay, and it's not really set up for fermenting right now, but here is the idea. I got a 32-gallon garbage can, which I will probably insulate on the outside. Simple 155, I went with the cheapest pump possible, so I went with 155 gallons per hour. That ran me just under 20 bucks. It's running at flow right now. You can see the ripples on the surface. It's not flowing super fast. I may end up upgrading the pump at some point. I'm going to run some experiments as far as the cooling temperature. I've got my kegerator is set for 50 degrees. You can see it's sitting at, see what it's sitting at now, but the lid is open. So it's set at 50 degrees, and the thermostat's just kind of hanging in there up against the keg. So up against the wall, it's actually cooler than 50 degrees. So I don't know. I'm going to run some tests and some experiments. Eventually, I'll hook this up to a control board of some sort, either an Arduino or a solid state or something. But right now I'm just going to run some experiments as far as overall temperature. I know what the room temperature is. I know what my water temperature started at. And I'm going to, so the water temperature started at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. The room temperature in here currently is around 70. And so I'll just take some temperatures of the water in the garbage can after a few hours and just see exactly how cool I can get it. But the idea is that I will eventually hook this up to a controller, insulate the garbage can, and with the circulation of the water through that heat exchanger, I should be able to reasonably, or at least keep a steady temperature and thermal mass around a carboy. This is just an intermediate step. I'm in the process of build out for fermentation chambers that are completely automated and controlled with integrated circuits and whatnot. So anyway, this is just intermediate steps so I can keep brewing lagers right now. Just kind of fun experimenting, playing around, bending some copper and whatnot. Fun little project. All right, so there you've seen the parts. You've seen the way I laid it out. I will say there were some problems with the build. I went on the cheap, so instead of getting a big roll of like say 20 feet of copper tubing, I already had some scraps of copper tubing laying around, so I just bought a 10-foot section. So I had to put an actual joint in there. I had to cobble together two pieces. That's not a big deal, but you know, it's a little bit ugly. And then my initial plan, I had taken some of my scrap tubing and was able with the spring bender to bend it around a hockey puck. Hockey puck's diameter is 3 inches, so I built my template with a 3-inch diameter. I'm a math teacher. You think I think about this stuff, but not really thinking that when the inside diameter of that curve is 3 inches, the outside is quite a bit more. So my template was a little bit small, and actually bending around that hockey puck proved to be more problematic than in my initial test. So my curves are actually a little bit bigger than 3 inches. They're probably about a 3.5 inch diameter. I just kind of adapted, and you'll see as you saw in the pictures, I kind of made up for it by over curving it. So instead of just being half of a curve, they kind of bent in. So my overall footprint of the manifold itself, of the heat exchanger itself, wasn't all that much different than my original plan. It just doesn't look as pretty and even. And I soldered it all up with some pipe hangers to keep it nice and firm, keep it from crimping around the corners and whatnot. Got it hooked in there. You can see from the pictures that I kind of had to work the plumbing around my taps. Again, it's not pretty, but nobody can see that, so who cares? And as I said, it's just temporary. This is just something intermediate before I get something a little bit better and a little bit more control going. Other than that, I can't really think of any problems. Oh yeah, if you're soldering, solder in closed-toed shoes. That probably for most of you sounds like common sense. My wife often says that what seems to be common sense for other people, you often need reminders about. I don't know what that means. Just kidding. Anyway, the other night I was working on it when I was soldering a joint. I had it sitting up there, and I was wearing flip-flops. It was hot. Not a good idea. So some solder dropped down, burned right between my toes in my flip-flop, so I got some blisters on 2 of my toes. Not a good idea to solder in flip-flops. So if you're going to solder or use any other kind of tools or any kind of construction work, wear real shoes, not flip-flops. That's kind of dumb. Other than that, it worked out great. So as I said, I'll post some more videos in the future. Hope everybody's been enjoying their summer, drinking some good beer, and I'm looking forward to seeing checking out this week's videos. Till next time, Sláinte. Drink well, my friends.